Hello and thanks for joining us for our weekly showcase of stories from our correspondents around the world. This week we'll take you on a trip to Cambodia. The first trial of the Khmer Rouge official is just drawing to a close and the nation is gripped. Then we'll visit Egypt, where both Muslims and Christians are trying to convert each other to their faiths. Finally, we'll take a look at the death penalty in Japan, which still has popular support, even though human rights campaigners say the treatment of death row prisoners is tantamount to cruelty. But first, to Pakistan, where the army says it's about to win its battle against the Taliban in the Swat Valley. An offensive was launched there back in May after pressure from the US, and more than 2 million people were forced to flee. But now they're starting to come back. Our correspondents, Cédric Moll-Laurençon and Dave Downing, witnessed the homecoming.
They took this route in the opposite direction 4 months ago, driven out by the military operation launched against the Taliban. The people displaced from Swat are returning to their valley by the hundreds of thousands, again pushed by the army, who says the insurgency there has been quashed.
Of course we're scared, but we have no choice but to go back.
Children have returned to the streets of Mingora, Swat's biggest town. As for the Taliban, they have disappeared, but evidence of their former presence remains.
It's people from here who wrote that. The Taliban are terrorists.
This man explains to us that the residents of this house were held captive by the Taliban. Women and children used as human shields against the army offensive.
Can you see? They use parts of mobile phones to make their bombs.
While the local population can only think of removing the marks left by the Taliban's occupation, the military is keen to show off its victories. Large quantities of weapons and bodies they claim were Taliban fighters. In the past few weeks, the army has also allegedly captured several of the most senior leaders of the insurgency, notably their spokesman in Swat, Muslim Khan.
In control of Taliban.
We met him on his land several months ago.
They must be in Swat, and they have to change the system, and we are going to implement the Sharia to get our aims.
In Swat, the Taliban lost their face and their voice. Now locals are starting to go home.
A huge number of people have returned. They are satisfied with the operations. They are relatively satisfied with the present security state level of security, and they are helping the army in arresting the militants. So therefore, if you consider this, I would say it is a great success of the military operation.
Officially, the Pakistani commandos tracked down and killed hundreds of Taliban entrenched in Mingora. But the walls of the town tell a different story. The place has been flattened by army bombs, but there's no trace of a major ground offensive. And nobody knows where the thousands of Taliban who held Swat have now fled to. These operations took place well away from journalists, intentionally kept at arm's length from the fighting. The military push here was supported across the board politically in Pakistan, although some would like it to go even further.
It's not in the Swat that we need to tackle the problem of the Pakistani Taliban. There are other places where the army needs to intervene. Punjab, for example, something needs to be done there, and also in Waziristan.
The Pakistani Central Command partially acknowledges this. The real war against the Taliban isn't in Swat, but in Waziristan, on the border with Afghanistan. It's from this region that insurgents are commanded by their new leader, Hakimullah Massoud. But for the moment, the Pakistani army is reluctant to move into the new ground.
It was a long time coming, but now Cambodians can watch the trial of a man who allegedly tortured, starved and overworked some 2 million people during the Khmer Rouge era. After 30 years of waiting, the closing arguments will soon be heard. In the trial of prison chief Duc, Cyril Payen and Solomon Kane spoke to some of those ordinary Cambodians who are following the case.
30 years after Cambodia's genocide, the first trial of a Khmer Rouge leader has entered its final stage. Closing arguments for the trial of Duc, Pol Pot's chief torturer, will take place in a few weeks. It is slowly captivating the country. Here on the outskirts of Phnom Penh, this family gets together to watch the trial on TV.
I'm very angry. Deep inside of me, I really want to destroy him, to kill him. But watching this trial helps me to appease the rage I have against the Khmer Rouge.
There, that's Duke. He's confessed to his crimes, but I want to know, who were his superiors? What orders did they give him?
Nobody really heard of Duke before the trial, but now we all know him, thanks to the TV.
In just under 4 years of the genocidal reign of the Khmer Rouge, about a quarter of the population perished. Pol Pot died without judgment, but at least 6 of his deputies will face justice. The public hearings have been packed for the trial of Duke, a maths professor turned torturer. And after getting more and more of the country interested in the trial, tribunal officials are now aiming to make an even bigger impact.
Me, what I want is to have the verdict of Duke's trial broadcast in stadiums, so the public can come and watch it on huge screens. It will be like the Football World Cup.
As the verdict approaches, Duke's lawyers remain firm.
There are many people in Cambodia asking why Duke is on trial. Why is he here? He didn't belong to the core group of leaders. He just took orders.
To comprehend and reconcile, many Cambodians return to the prison that Duke ran, where over 15,000 people met their death. To comprehend and reconcile is also the aim of the trial.
Some say it's an isolated phenomenon, while others are of the view that it's expanding. Every year, thousands of Egyptians convert to Christianity. Exact figures are hard to check, but the story captivates Egyptians, especially since Muslims are also trying to convert Christians to their faith. Igal Sedoun reports.
This is a Coptic, or native Egyptian Christian parish near Cairo. 10% of the Egyptian population is Christian. At this church service, the Cross of Life is symbolically covered in blood, in homage to the young Christians who've been forced to convert to Islam. The community is also paying tribute to Father Matois, who's serving a 3-year prison sentence for secretly converting Muslims to Christianity, a crime that goes severely punished by Egyptian law. Ahmad Adel is Muslim. When he was invited by Christian friends to visit Cairo's Abbasiyya Cathedral, he didn't hesitate, even though he knew why he'd been asked to go.
They said it's simple. By converting to Christianity, you'll automatically qualify for religious asylum, and then you can emigrate to the United States.
Though Muslims also proselytize Copts, it's much less frowned upon. Yet Ahmad admits he's seen Christian recruitment going on at his college.
It also goes on inside the university. The director of the Fine Arts faculty knows that one of the teachers is Christian and proselytizing his students. A sly and insidious speech can make them start doubting their national and their religious identity, but the director doesn't do anything.
One journalist at a pro-government magazine says evangelism is on the increase and poses a threat to Egypt's national security.
It's an undercover operation, but experts know they're receiving important financial support from abroad. They're trying to cause religious unrest in Egypt.
That's the worry of Nagla Mohammed El Imam, also known as Catherine since her conversion to Christianity. She's a member of the association Free Me Jesus, an American evangelist group that's been outlawed in Egypt. But for Catherine and her lawyer, the ban is an example of double standards in Egyptian law.
In Egypt, there are groups just like ours which proselytize Islam, but no one's opposed to that. Proselytizing isn't done by hypnosis. It's a direct way of convincing people to change religion. But I ask you this, why is it that in the Middle East we don't respect the beliefs of others?
Tens of thousands of Egyptians become Christian every year, an embarrassing figure for Cairo, where the Al-Azhar Mosque is a long-time bastion of the Sunni faith.
It's been banned in many countries around the world, but in Japan, the death penalty is still widely considered as an effective crime deterrent. The new Justice Minister, Keiko Shiba, has to sign off on every death warrant before executions can be carried out. But she's opposed to capital punishment. Can she bring change to the Japanese justice system? Nathalie Touré and her team in Tokyo take a look.
Takeko Mukai often comes to this Takarazuka cemetery to pray. A long-time campaigner against the death penalty, she helped build this monument in support of abolition.
What's written here means, I want to scream so loud under the winter moon that it ends up in pieces. A death row inmate wrote this poem.
But the text calling for an end to the death penalty has been carved on the other side. It has been hidden from view to stop supporters of the death penalty from damaging the monument. Mukai has befriended several death row inmates during their years in detention. She even adopted one, making him her fourth child. This was the only way for Mukai to be allowed to meet him in prison. He wrote these letters. His name was Shinji. He was sentenced to death for triple murder in 1988 and executed 15 years later. 15 long years during which Mukai could only watch him suffer.
He used to tell me they kept him in handcuffs, his hands in the front or behind his back. I don't know whether his legs were tied or not, he didn't tell me. He couldn't even go to the bathroom, and they made him eat like a dog, with his mouth down to the ground.
In a report published in early September, Amnesty International Japan denounced such detention conditions, which the NGO says drive some prisoners insane. One of the main problems is the secrecy surrounding executions.
The people who are going to be executed even do not know about their own execution before an hour or few hours. They are facing every day about the possible execution. It's quite cruel.
This woman, Keiko Chiba, has the power to change the situation. The new justice minister could begin by refusing to sign execution orders and thus put an end to them. But Chiba has not clearly stated her intentions yet, and the death penalty remains popular in Japan.
I believe it's a good thing that the death penalty is effective. Isn't it better than lifelong jail terms?
We do not live in a perfect world, so I support the death penalty.
According to a 2007 survey, more than 80% of the Japanese population supports the death penalty.
That's it for this edition. Join us again next week for more stories from our teams around the world. Thanks to Kate Williams for producing this show and to you for watching. Bye for now.